Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett, and today we're going to get into another stock market video. And in this video we are going to get into the order types. It's very important to note that we're not really going to be talking too much about longing, shorting, or some of the other things, but these are specifically when you do long or short or what it may be, you will be given an option to do several order types depending on the firm. So as far as that goes, let's jump on in. And by the way, the user interface that I'm going to be showing just real quick right now, it might not be the same as with the firm that you're with, but a thing to note is it normally would be something like this, where the order type, you can select if maybe a trail stop or something like that for your order, and we'll explain what all those means. So as far as that goes, let's get into the first one, which is a market order. Now note that your firm might not show market order, but it's very important to note when you're not using any of the other order types, no other restrictions onto it, it's by default a market order. It is the most common type of order when it comes to trading, but basically what it is say for example stock whatever is at $2 and you want to buy it right now, so you put in a market order. Now between the time that you put in the order and when it was processed, that price might went up or down, and that's the thing that you got to keep in mind. So say for example, if you're buying $2 worth of stock, and let's say that, for example, that you only have, I don't know, $2 in your account. If the time that it takes from the you to put in the order and for the process, if it went up beyond whatever limit that you gave, which in this case you only had $2 in your account, it will say, oh, it cannot complete the order, so therefore it has problems. That's something to note, because a lot of people end up getting messed over with certain firms where they have lower quality servers or low quality networking into their system. So some people literally have reported from the time that they hit submit and the time it actually buys or sells, 12 seconds went by, and in some cases that can cost you thousands of dollars right there. So it's fairly important to note that if you're going to be doing this, specifically the market orders, that your firm is able to keep up with the demand, which that's fairly important. So now we got limit orders. What is a limit order? It's basically a limit that you want to put on the market. So for example, if you want to buy a given stock, it doesn't matter whatever it is, and the price of it right now is say $50, and you think that it's going to go down so you can buy it cheaper and more of it, or at least cheaper. Well, say for example it's $50 and you think it's maybe going to go down to $49. Well, what you'll do is you'll put a limit order right now, even though it's $50, and if it goes down to the $49, then it will go ahead and purchase that for you. Now as far as that goes, you can also do it in reverse when selling. So say for example, again, $50, if you want to sell the stock and it's at $50, but you think it's going to go up, say maybe $55, so what you want to do is simply put the limit order for $55 to sell, and whenever it gets to the $55 mark, it will sell. It's pretty simple as that. So now we get into stop loss. What is that? It's basically saying that how much are you willing to lose. So for example, if the stock right now is maybe at $50 and you're going to go on vacation or spend time with family or whatever it may be, well, what happens if the market drops and you're just not there to deal with it, to mitigate it? So maybe you're away for a week, 2 weeks, or a couple months, and you're just simply not there to mitigate the damage. Well, what happens here is, say the market's at $50, specifically the stock's at $50, and you're comfortable with losing $5. So what you would do is you put the stop loss at $45. Now, if the market goes up, it doesn't sell. So when you get back, you just cancel that, or you have it automatically trigger after a certain day, it cancels. And then and basically what would end up happening is if it does hit that $45 mark, then it will go ahead and sell it for you, and that way you're not worried about it causing too much of a problem. This is a very important thing. So say, for example, if a company does something stupid while you're on vacation, because many brokers, believe it or not, who do this stuff full time, and they don't have to really worry about, say, side job for insurance or deal with side jobs at all, they tend to go on vacation for several months at a time. And with that, they tend to use stop losses in order to keep their losses to a minimum, if there is a loss at all. So now we're going to get into what I personally use and what I think is most useful out of this, and it's called trailing. And basically how trailing works is, let's say, for example, your current price for your stock is at $50. You think it's going to go up to $60, but there's no 100%. No matter which way you go about all this stuff, there's no real 100% it's going to go beyond $60, if not. So what happens here is you find a price that you think it's going to go to, in this case being $60, and you put a trail stop up there. You say that at $60, activate the trail stop, and say how much you're comfortable with it losing. So for example, if you're okay with losing $2-3, let's say $1, just to keep things simple. So what would end up happening is at $60, the trailing will activate it. And then let's say if it goes to, say, $65, well, the trail stop follows it. So at $65, if it drops down to $64, it sells then, because it's whatever you put, in this case being $1 from the peak. So if the thing kept going up to $70, $80, let's say $70, if the thing went down to $69, then it was sold then. So it follows it going up. This is a very, very helpful thing. And a similar thing happens when you're buying stocks. So for example, if you go ahead and maybe a stock is at $50 and you think it's going to go down to, say, $45, but again, there's no real evidence that it's going to go further down, or it's going to go at that price. So since you think it's going to go to $45, you put the trail stop at $45 and say about $1. And what would end up happening is if it goes down to $45 and then it goes right up to $46, it buys it at that moment. But what happens if it goes further down? So let's say it hits that $45, so it starts that trail, and the trail follows it at that point. So now it goes to, say, $35. So it's at its lowest peak on the bottom side, and then it goes up that $1, so $36, and then it buys it there. So it follows it going down, whereas the others, the limits and stuff like that, they basically if say that $45 you want to buy it, well, let's say it goes from $46 to $44, great. But if it $46 to $45, then they'll just buy it $45. And let's say it just keeps going down, say that $35. Well, you're actually in the hole because you bought it at a much higher price and now it's currently at a lower price. So that's something to keep really much in mind, because what can end up happening is if you use, my personal opinion, do not use if you use a market order, fine, that's fine, whatever. But if you're using any of the other things, it needs to be a trail, because what happens is again, like I said, if you want to buy something where it's $50 now, and you think it's going to go down to $45, and it buys it, great. But now it just kept going down, and whereas if you had a trail stop, guess what? It'll been following it. And now here's the thing with a trail stop is if the wider the gap is, the more risk there is. So for example, if you think it's going to go down to $45, a price from $50 to $45, and instead of $1, if it goes down from $45, and at that point it triggers it, and if it goes up $1, then it buys it. Well, instead of that, you put it $10. So the risk now is basically if it hits that $45 limit, so it triggers it, and then it goes to some in the 50s, then you're kind of out of luck. Or say, for example, if it goes down to, I don't know, that $35, and then it goes right back up to the $45, well, you lost a lot of money from that gap, because you could have easily bought it. Even though it might not have been $35, it probably been $36, $37. That's a lot of money that you could have gained, depending on how many shares you've had. And the same thing with selling, is the bigger the gap, the worse things can be. But also, the smaller the gap, the worse things can be also. So for example, if you think it's going to go down to $45 and you want to buy it, and you set that dollar difference, so okay, if it goes 46, it does end up buying it. Well, what happens if it does end up buying it, then it drops down to that $35 mark? Well, the thing is by widening that gap a little, it won't ever hit the actual trigger, the trailing, and it will just keep going. It will just end up going down to the $35 mark until it's ready to just go back up. Same thing with selling it, is if the thing goes and the selling process, if it goes down a little, and if it doesn't hit that trail and it just jumps back up, great. But if you, like, say for example, if you think something's going to be selling at $60, and it drops down a little to, like, say $59, and you trigger it, and then it jumps up to $100 and something, well, you lost a whole bunch of money. Whereas if the trail was a little bit farther, then it will jump up. It's very, in my opinion, if obviously not many, you're not really going to find too many stocks, and at least beyond hindsight type of thing, you're not really going to find too many stocks at all that are that volatile. And in many cases, you don't even want something that volatile. But with that being said, the thing you got to keep in mind is, if I was you, I would adjust accordingly as it's going up or down. So for example, if it gets up to $60, from $50 to $60, and then it gets up to, say, $100, so you might become, maybe the time, bills, or whatever it may be, you might become less and less okay with it dropping below a certain point. So you might decrease it, or you might increase it, maybe you're more okay. So I would highly suggest changing it over time, and that way you're never going overshooting and undershooting, this type of thing. But trailing, I personally think that is the most useful out of all this. Keep in mind that this doesn't really get too much into the long and shorting. We're going to get into that in a later video. Anyways, hope you have a great day.